My name is Tanisha Shaw. I'm a high school social studies teacher and I've taught for 9 years in urban schools with populations of mostly African American students. My teaching experience has led me to explore one of the most significant and often controversial issues in education, the achievement gap between Black and white students. I will use national data to answer the question, are standardized tests the best tool to measure student achievement? Finally, I will offer solutions that I believe can make education more effective for all students. First, let's look at what the numbers and percentages say about the differences between Black and white students. The National Assessment of Educational Progress reviews the Common Core data and math reading assessment scores of 8th graders across the nation. In their findings, we noticed that in the United States, 77% of schools have student populations that have a low density of Black students, while only 10% of schools in the United States have a high density of Black students. The average white student will attend a school where Black students are composed of 9% of the student population, while the average Black student in the United States attends a school where Black students only compose 48% of the student population. This reveals that schools remain segregated even after the passage of legislation and important court rulings to have full integration. The result is that achievement for both Black and white students are lower in comparison to the national average in schools with a high density population of Black students. Even within the schools, we know that Black and white student achievements are larger in high density schools than low density schools. These are interesting findings that speak to the differences in the opportunities for white and Black students. In states such as North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Pennsylvania, the largest component of the achievement gap is found within the schools rather than across the schools. So overall, the size of achievement gaps between Black and white students would either increase or decrease when students' socioeconomic status, culture and language, teacher experience, and school characteristics are taken into consideration. The division of students based on race and class predisposes students to lower standardized scores because of the lack of cross-cultural interactions and exposure to popular cultural codes needed by Black students to properly maneuver on standardized tests. But the implications are more controversial if we look solely at the numbers. The numbers imply that there is something either genetically or culturally superior about white students over Black students. Over the last 40 years, all children have increased in academic achievement. However, that white student achievement remains higher than Black student achievement. The Supreme Court case Brown versus the Board of Education was viewed as a solution to solve any gap between Black and white students. The important Supreme Court ruling ended de jure segregation or legal segregation in public schools. However, the case did not impact de facto integration, which is a dividing of races and classes through personal choices. The system of education never changed its identity to meet the cultural and social needs of Black students. Black students had to acclimate themselves to an education system that was designed since the early 19th century to benefit white students and promote the cultural standards of Protestant Anglo-Saxons, thus the achievement gap. So what causes the achievement gap? Number one, there is a clear relationship between the percentage of students in a school who are Black and an uneven distribution of key academic support tools such as experienced and effective teachers, thus creating differences in student opportunities and success. Public policies by local, state, and federal governments to fix the achievement gap or to standardize education for all students have been unsuccessful. Programs such as Head Start, school busing, and No Child Left Behind never really address the root causes of the achievement gap, but often blame students, their parents, or communities for the low achievement measurements based on biased information. In high-density schools, Black students were often more eligible for free and reduced lunch, and their parents had lower educational attainment than their white counterparts. We know that parent IQs, educational attainment, cognitive stimulation, child nutrition consistently have had the most impact on student achievement. So based on my interpretations of national data, I have formed two critical views about the achievement gap and the use of standardized tests to measure student achievement. First, the use of standardized tests to determine student achievement is problematic. This practice continues the perpetuation of culturally biased curriculum and the devastating culture of poverty that does not support the needs of students of color. Children from lower socioeconomic status often do not have access to the opportunities and cultural capital needed to close the achievement gap. School systems often focus more on modifiable factors such as classroom size and school size, and even teacher mobility, rather than socioeconomic and racial factors. School systems also fail to consider non-cognitive factors like stereotype threats and code switching. A stereotype threat is a theory that negative stereotypes, already preconceived, can impact the performance of certain groups, while code switching is a theory that students of color have to operate in two different cultures, and that their success or achievement is determined by their ability to understand the culture of popular society. Which leads me to my second critical view, that there is not an achievement gap in the ability of students of color, but there is a performance gap based on differences in culture and expectations. So how can we change this negative rhetoric about the use of the achievement gap? First, let's end the over-reliance on standardized tests as a determinant of student proficiency. Let's use meaningful learning experiences, create more cultural connections in curriculum, implement rigorous and engaging curriculum for all students, and hire more experienced and committed teachers in high-density schools. Until the recognition is made in the American education system that reflects all cultures, the use of the term achievement gap will harm Black students more than help.